Hello, friends. Welcome back to From the Dark Side. I'm your host, Sherry. It's that time of the year again. I do this every once in a while, and I realized it's been 4 months since the last time. You can even go back and check. It's time to solicit reviews. If you like this show, please leave me a review, whether it's Spotify, Apple, or whatever. I get a lot of streams on those platforms, but not a lot of reviews. I don't know why that is, but I'm thinking it's because I don't ask a lot or remind people every episode. I don't want to have to start doing that because it's annoying. But it would mean a lot to me and really helps me out as a host if you leave me a review. You don't even have to type anything. Just tap 5 stars and you'll make my day. You'll only have to do it once for it to count, and you'll never have to do it again. That's it, and thank you for letting me do my sales pitch. Today we're talking about Alice Hufnagle, a loving mother of 6 who died in 2002. Her life was cut short by someone who broke into her home. This case does end up getting solved, so we have closure in this one. Trigger warning, since we will be discussing sexual assault. This is episode 174, The Case of Alice Hufnagle. Let's go back to 2002 for this one. Didn't we just have a case from 2002 recently? I can't remember. The first outbreak of SARS began in China. Elon Musk founded SpaceX. I didn't realize it had been around that long. The Winter Olympics were held in Salt Lake City. A gallon of milk cost $2.68. The top song was How You Remind Me by Nickelback. And in bizarre news from 2002, a couple sued Air Canada for $5 million for losing their pet, a 15-year-old tabby cat named Foo. They did this because the airline was only going to reimburse them like he was a suitcase, which was $14 per pound. Alice Hufnagle is 67 years old. She lives in East Norriton Township in Pennsylvania. This is a suburb outside of Philadelphia. Alice lives alone. She and her husband Jack had split up almost a year prior to our story. From everything I can gather, it wasn't the worst divorce, even though it was alleged that he had been cheating on her. They still talk to each other and seem to be on decent enough terms. They're in their late 60s. Maybe older people who divorce can navigate the awkwardness around each other better. I have no idea. Alice has 6 adult children, which are 5 daughters and 1 son, and 10 grandchildren. She was known to be fiercely protective, hardworking, and always thinking of others. Alice works as a pharmacy technician at a local grocery store called Giant. We have a lot of these here on the East Coast. She had been there since 1996, so about 6 years. She was known to chat with customers and always greeted everyone with a smile, answer insurance questions, or any questions customers had about their prescription medicines. Alice lives alone. Again, her and Jack split up almost a year prior to our story. She wasn't into dating or anything like that. She is just getting used to being on her own and seems to be handling life well. On the evening of November 23rd, 2002, this was a Saturday, and in less than a week, it would be Thanksgiving. Alice is at home. She had gotten off work that afternoon and went to her local Wawa convenience store. She had called her ex-husband Jack that evening to ask if he could swing by tomorrow and fix her toilet. He agreed that he would come by around lunchtime tomorrow. Now it's late at night, and there is a hell of a storm going on outside. Winds are really bad. There's thunder, lightning, and heavy rain. She heard branches hitting the window from how hard the wind was blowing. Outside, it's a torrential downpour. Suddenly, Alice hears the sound of glass breaking coming from upstairs. She thinks it might have been from a tree branch, so she gets up to investigate. Alice is startled to see standing in front of her is a man wearing a Scream mask. If you're unfamiliar with a Scream mask, it's from the movie Scream, basically a black mask with a white ghost face that's elongated. This is horrifying and sounds like something out of a nightmare for anyone. There's a man standing in front of her wearing this creepy mask in her home. According to unusual suspects, the next morning the storm cleared out. Alice's ex-husband Jack comes over around 11:30 a.m. to work on her toilet. He's got his plumbing tools and knocks on the door, but Alice doesn't answer. He opens the door and walks inside and doesn't see Alice anywhere. He walks upstairs and into the bedroom and is shocked to see the body of his ex-wife, 67-year-old Alice Hufnagle. Jack immediately calls the police. Several squad cars arrive within minutes and found Alice deceased in her upstairs bedroom. Trigger warning: Alice was found lying face down on the bed. There is blood everywhere on this bed. She had duct tape around her head and neck. Her face was badly damaged with lots of cuts and bruises. Whoever this attacker was beat her in her face for a while. She had marks around her neck that indicated she had been strangled. Alice was naked from the waist down. They determined that she had been raped. This community now has a rapist and murderer wandering around. Police have to solve this crime ASAP. They found tiny hairs that did not belong to Alice. They bagged these up and will have them tested later. Something that stands out is that nothing was taken. Her house wasn't ransacked. She had money and jewelry laying out. Everything's there. This was a personal crime, not a robbery. Usually after a robbery, they walk in and find drawers pulled open and purses emptied out on the floor. Alice's home didn't have any of those things. Just a lot of blood and a broken window in the upstairs bathroom, which, by the way, there's no ladder or anything, so they have no idea how this person climbed onto the roof in a thunderstorm. Alice's house sat back off the road. Somebody had to have known that she lived there, and this was a targeted hit. But who would want to kill and rape this sweet lady? She was everyone's favorite pharmacy tech. She didn't have a lot of drama in her life. Why Alice? Alice's 6 grown children are informed that she was killed, and this news is devastating. They struggled to comprehend how someone could do this to their mother. Naturally, the first person they want to talk to is Jack for a few reasons. He was the first person to find her. They're in the middle of a divorce. Also, and most importantly, Alice hadn't changed her beneficiary yet. So ex-husband Jack would be set to collect her life insurance policy with Alice dead. He would also inherit her house. These 3 coincidences have police wondering if Jack was possibly the one who broke into Alice's house last night during the storm. The police noted that Jack was very calm this morning and wasn't freaking out or anything. He explained to them that they married 9 years ago. It was the second marriage for both of them. Their marriage was good for a long time, but they separated almost a year ago. They were on friendly terms, though, and she would sometimes call him over to do handyman work around the house. They bring him in for an interrogation, hoping he would just confess, but Jack says he has nothing to do with this. He just came by to fix her toilet. Jack had an alibi, not a solid one, but he claims he was home with his girlfriend. He passed a polygraph. Jack was so sure he wasn't involved that he even offered his DNA to use as a sample. He's not 100% cleared yet, but he was allowed to leave and go home, and we'll call you if we need you. So this bathroom window had been broken. Inside the bathroom, they found shattered glass and a trail of blood. They collect the pieces of glass with blood on them and put them into evidence bags. Whoever broke in injured their hand from punching through the window because they left all this blood everywhere. They know the killer climbed onto the roof somehow in the storm. No ladder was found at the scene, and the window wasn't very big. This person is in good shape. According to Unusual Suspects, a few days after the murder was Thanksgiving. Alice would have been hosting her whole big family here at her house, but for now it still has crime scene tape and forensic vans parked outside. Alice's children did the best they could for Thanksgiving. They know Alice would want them to have a big dinner and have everyone together. It wasn't the same without Mom Alice around, though. It was a really sad time for everyone. Alice's daughters all said that their mom once told them, "If something happens to me and I'm no longer here, I want you to remember me alive and happy." She sounds like such an amazing person. This is the hard part of murder cases that most people don't see. The family isn't just sad, they're stuck in a weird limbo. This is like enhanced grief. Each day passes without answers. They wake up, go on about their lives, but with this constant knowledge that the person who killed mom is still out there. So detectives have all this DNA. It's literally all over Alice's house. But the problem is that it is 2002 and DNA testing is happening, but it's not instant results. It could take weeks to find a match. And that's only if the person's in the database. Nowadays, these kind of things move fairly quickly depending on how good the sample is. While everyone's waiting on these results, police go door to door asking if anyone saw or heard anyone that night. Most said they just remember a bad storm and that's why no one was outside and heard anything. But these neighbors are all in shock, not just because nice Miss Alice is dead, but because their peaceful neighborhood had been disturbed and a rapist and killer is on the loose. An older woman murdered in her own home in a safe suburban town, that just doesn't happen every day. With her family and neighbors cleared, the next place to check was her work, giant grocery store. According to an article by Oxygen, detectives knew that Alice had been at work that day. They want to check out her coworkers and pharmacy customers. Maybe she had a bad argument with someone, or she had someone she recently complained about at work. This grocery store employed 240 people, so the list was pretty long. They narrowed it down to people who worked the same shift as her, then narrowed it down some more. They couldn't find anyone that seemed like a likely candidate for being a rapist and murderer. Police want to take a close look at someone who is on their radar. One of Alice's daughters has a new boyfriend named Mike. He's basically the only new male in Alice's life. He is 32 years old and works at a restaurant as a dishwasher just a few miles from Alice's home. Police learned that Mike's mother has a restraining order against him. The detectives pay Mike a visit, and what first catches their eyes is that he has an injured hand. Better jot that down. They talked to Mike for a bit and learned that his injured hand came from him getting angry after an argument with his girlfriend and punching a wall. Seems like a really bad time for anyone in this area to have a hand injury. They also learned that yes, his own mother took out a restraining order against him. He denied that he ever laid a hand on her, and his mother was found to be severely mentally ill. They learned that Alice really liked Mike a lot and even told him that she was glad he made her daughter so happy. This came from Alice's family, not just from Mike. This guy doesn't really have a motive anyway. They ask Mike if they can take a DNA swab, which he agreed to. The killer's DNA was not a match to anyone in the database in 2002. The semen and blood were found to belong to the same individual. They have this full DNA profile now, but no hits, meaning this guy has never been in any major trouble. He likely has a clean record. Worst case scenario is that they have to wait for another crime to take place and maybe his DNA will pop up then, but that's a last resort. We've seen it in other cases. They ran the DNA against Alice's ex-husband and her daughter's boyfriend. Neither of them were a match, so they were finally crossed off the list. Police get a potential break when a man walked into the police station and he is immediately sent straight to the top of the suspect list. He says he is there to file a noise complaint. He says he can't sleep at night because of all the noise. They take a report and quickly realize this man is suffering from mental illness and the noises he hears at night are in his head. He's showing signs of some sort of psychiatric disorder. One of the detectives says, "Wait, I know you. You look really familiar." Turns out this man was charged with rape a few years ago. They ask him if he could come to the back to answer some questions in the interrogation room. He goes back there and he's giving really evasive answers. He panics when questioned about Alice's murder. The only thing he answered clearly was when they asked him where he was on the night of November 23rd. He says he was at a convenience store. Well, this convenience store ends up being just 100 yards from Alice's home. So this puts a convicted rapist right next to her home around the same time she was raped and murdered. He starts yelling that he doesn't want to answer any more of their questions. Detectives don't know if it's the mental illness causing him to lash out or if it's because he's guilty. Finally, he says, "If you think I did it, prove it." He says he is done answering their questions. As he's walking out to leave, they ask him for a DNA sample, and he refuses to give them one. However, before this interview ever started, the detectives did the old trick of giving him a soda out of the vending machine. He sat there and drank this soda the whole time during the interview, so they have his DNA anyway. After he leaves, they collect the can and put it in a bag and send it off to the lab. They learned this man's address was listed as a mental institution. I don't think mental institution is a politically correct term these days. I think they're called mental health facilities, and mental institutions are being phased out. Anyway, he was allowed out during the daytime and he had to return each evening. So it's possible he came back later than usual that night. The lab calls after a week and said the results were in and he was not the killer. His DNA was not a match. There is still a killer and rapist walking the streets free right now, and detectives are getting frustrated that they keep coming up empty-handed. They are back at square one. But they do have something else that helps narrow it down some. On Alice's leg, crime scene techs found a few hairs. They learned through tests that these hairs belong to a black male. That's the only clue they have besides the blood and semen found at the scene. But they have no suspects. All they know for sure is that this 100% was a targeted hit. This person knew Alice lived alone in that house, and she was home alone that night. Alice didn't date anyone. She wasn't into that kind of stuff at all, so that rules out a potential boyfriend. Police go through records for all of Alice's neighbors. Every single one comes up clean, except for one. A man named Jude that they had talked to when they were going door to door. Jude is a 56-year-old married family man. He is the one in the neighborhood who helps take care of people's yards and does a lot for the community. They see that he has a sexual assault conviction in his past, so they pay him another visit. He obviously does not want to talk with his wife and children around, so they step out into the yard. He says yes, he has a conviction for sexual assault on his record. It was from 20 years ago. He was a different person back then, and he's very sorry for his past. They ask what he was doing the night of November 23rd. He says he was in Miami with his wife at a business conference. Afterwards, they went to Brazil, and then they came home. Once they got home, they learned about their neighbor Alice getting murdered and were devastated. Police need some proof that he really was in Miami, so he provided a bunch of credit card receipts. They also called hotels and the convention center and all verified that yes, Jude was there with his wife on November 23rd. According to reporting by Keith Herbert for the Philadelphia Inquirer, Alice's children lost their dad just 7 months after losing their mom. 2003 was a really hard year for this family. Alice's children, the district attorney's office, and giant grocery stores put up a $15,000 reward to anyone who could identify this rapist and killer. They want closure. They want justice. They are dealing with the death of 2 parents now. Police decide to go back to all their notes again. They have to be missing something. It's now been 8 months since the night of the murder, and the case is turning cold. They go back to looking into Alice's coworkers. Most had been cleared, but they now wanted to know if anyone called out of work the day after the murder or anything odd that would stand out. They found one inconsistency while reviewing time cards and all their notes. There was a young man who worked in the grocery store with Alice. He told police he had been at work all day on the day after Alice's murder when her body was discovered, but his time card showed that he had only clocked in for 15 minutes. The manager of the store identifies him as 24-year-old Jeffrey Vampel. He was a model employee at the store who was very quiet and soft-spoken. He got along with everyone at the store. He definitely doesn't fit the profile of someone who would commit this very violent crime. The manager also tells police that he remembered that morning because Jeffrey came in with a cast on his hand. This really raises detectives' eyebrows. So police check into this and found that the morning after Alice's murder, Jeffrey had received emergency surgery on his wrist for a lacerated tendon. According to Unusual Suspects, police confront Jeffrey as he was getting out of his vehicle to head into the grocery store for work. He looked surprised to see them and said he would cooperate with whatever questions they had for him. He had a lot of good things to say about Alice. He says she was a sweet lady and reminded him of his own grandmother. They ask him about the large scar on his wrist. He said it was from moving a china cabinet in his apartment and the glass broke. Police tell him they want to take a look at this china cabinet, and he tells them sure they can come to his apartment and take a look. They get in the patrol car and head to Jeffrey's apartment, and sure enough, he shows them the antique china cabinet with the broken piece of glass. He says he was moving it and the glass swung open and he lost his balance and ended up getting cut really bad. They ask him if they could search the rest of his apartment, and he tells them, sure, go ahead. This is great. They don't have to get a search warrant or anything. This kid is letting them look around all on his own. One detective sat with him at his dining room table while the others searched the apartment. Jeffrey is just as calm as can be, almost like he doesn't even realize what is going on around him. The detective at the table with him asks him about his interests and hobbies, and he says he writes and sings gospel songs. He then began singing one of them out loud with detectives tearing his apartment apart all around him. When they got to Jeffrey's bedroom closet, they found something disturbing. A scream mask with bloody smears on it. They also found a roll of duct tape. Stuck on the side of the roll were blonde hairs consistent with Alice's hair. They found a ton of pornography in this apartment, like really brutal stuff. They found secret videotapes he had made of female employees he worked with. He would catch them walking in front of him and start recording. Really gross, predatory behavior. They also found hidden under the sofa a pair of women's underwear stained with blood. Jeffrey is still singing his praises to Jesus as detectives go into the kitchen and look at his calendar. They flip back to November 23rd and saw Jeffrey had circled the day in red. In the block, he had written, "My love, oh what a day." They conclude their search and bring Jeffrey back to the station. They confront him with this treasure trove of evidence they found in his apartment. He says he doesn't know how it got there, but he thinks maybe one of the maintenance workers at his apartment complex planted it there. But he couldn't explain why he wrote what he did in his calendar. Jeffrey denied he had anything to do with Alice's murder. He kept coming up with reasons for why he was there. First, he said he was being chased by two men, so he ran to Alice's house and broke in to be safe from these men. He says he, air quotes, accidentally inserted himself into her. He says that when he left her house, she was alive. Finally, one detective tells him, "This is what I think happened. You broke into her upstairs bathroom window during the storm, you raped and murdered her, you severely damaged your wrist and had to get surgery the next morning from where you cut yourself punching through her window." Jeffrey finally says yes, he did it, but he didn't really give an explanation, just that it was a, quote, crazy adventure. July 25th, 2003, 8 months after the murder. 24-year-old Jeffrey Vampel was arrested for the rape and murder of 67-year-old Alice Hufnagle. He was held without bail at the Montgomery County Correctional Facility. They get his DNA and send it to the lab. It comes back as a perfect match. The blood-stained underwear was a match to Alice. We learn that Jeffrey had a fixation on Alice. He had this weird obsession with her. He would stare at her at work and other odd things. Alice, just being Alice, was always nice to him and never suspected that he was a threat. They were described as barely knowing one another. They worked in different departments and barely talked at all during work. Jeffrey went to Alice's house that night with the, quote, intention of having sex with her. Those are his words. That initially was his plan. He climbed onto her roof, punched through the bathroom window, and entered the house. He bled all over the place during the attack, leaving DNA everywhere. He had this scream mask on, so Alice didn't know who was attacking her. He wrapped duct tape around her head to keep her from screaming. Her bloody fingerprint smears found on the mask indicated that she was fighting back and removed the mask from his face. Once she saw his face, she recognized him as her young coworker. Now that she knew the identity of her attacker, she could turn him in. So Jeffrey strangled her before she would ever have the chance to do that. Jeffrey says he was sorry and it was accidental. He says he didn't want to kill her, but he didn't have a choice now that she knew who he was. The creepiest twist is that Alice knew her attacker. She smiled at him in the break room each day, never knowing he had this weird fascination with her. She probably treated him no differently than her own grandchildren. Jeffrey was charged with first and second-degree murder, rape, burglary, and possessing instruments of crime. The district attorney announced he would be seeking the death penalty. In July of 2004, Jeffrey is going to go to trial and plead guilty. He apologized to Alice's family, saying, "I am truly sorry and may God bless her soul." One of Alice's daughters said in court that she has trouble sleeping at night because she's terrified someone is going to climb through her window. Alice's son said, quote, "She died alone, half naked, and strangled and terrified. He said the hardest thing he ever did was when he had to call his 5 sisters to tell them our mother was dead." 24-year-old Jeffrey Vampel was sentenced to life in prison. He has been in prison since 2004, so around 21 years today. Her murderer is behind bars, so in a legal sense there's closure, but Alice still isn't here. Alice's family remembers her as someone who was warm, hardworking, and always thinking of others. She was a mom of 6, a grandmother of 10, a friend, a neighbor. Alice was a pharmacy tech and a familiar, trusted presence in her community. She deserved to live out her years in peace, not have her life stolen by someone she barely knew outside of work. Alice is buried at the St. Agnes Cemetery in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Rest in peace to Alice Hufnagle. That's it for this week, and I'll see you all again soon. Take care, and much love to you all.